we started speaking about basically 2 days ago on the shlav of Pekida, which is Binyan Haguf, and we started speaking about that. It's the omek of what that's accomplishing is the Shechina being mislabish with Midas HaYisod, which Hashem revealing Himself, not in a revealed way, but that all of our actions are connected, that there's a possibility for a person to be in consciousness of all of the actions that happen in the physical world are really connected to Shorashim Elyonim of Gilui of Hashem.
I have to admit, I don't know what, since I'm totally ignorant of the Sfirot, I don't even know what you mean by Yesod.
Again, all of these things should, the way to understand them is intuitively, not in some kind of sefer, which, because...
No, I can't even connect the word Yesod with anything.
Okay, so Yesod represents, obviously, right? The bris kodesh is the Yesod, and you can see it in Yosef Atzadik, which basically means is that there's an entire life of Klal Yisrael, which could theoretically be, in his expression and experience, be very not revealed as part of anything that has to do with the revelation of Hashem in the world. So, for example, Galus, where Midas HaYesod is not revealed, what it is an experience of doing what you're told, right? Where there's no intimate relationship, where it's just we're like an eved to the melech, and there's dalad amos shel halacha, right? And the basic experience is I did the right thing. That's the sum total of the midos that happens when a person does halacha. As it's easily experienced in the translated in the human need for ratzon, basically is it's going to be good for me or it's not going to be good for me, because that's the level of revelation that was able to experience in Gullus, which is always about tzchar va'onesh. And that's why many of the Svarim would write, Musar Svarim, right? It's going to be good for you, olam haba, olam haba. They use other concepts of other afterlife things like Gehenim. And that's how people were able to interact with the value of mitzvahs. Okay,
that's Yesod.
That's before Yesod. That's when there's a netek. That's when there's no intimate relationship, right? It's basically, it feels like there's no marriage. There is a concept of a melech, right? But it's not an intimate melech. He's not involved in your life. He has responsibility. He does do things in your life. He's mashgiach, right? There's no level of hashgacha. And there's your responsibilities towards the melech. But we don't live in the same house. We're not married. We're not connected, right?
And when was this?
That's Golus. That's 2,000 years. We've been that way. That's Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ela Daled Amos Shel Halacha, right? That's how most of Yiddishkeit was framed till not a very long time ago. Okay? When Hashem decided to pakad es amo, and he came and he took us out of Golus, it's like the way it's described in Shir Shirim is the lover comes and rescues his woman which has been taken away from him, right? What he's revealing to her is the level of love and connection that she has. She's more to him than just a person who does a certain job, right? That has a certain role in the world, certain responsibilities in the world. But actually, their life is intertwined, that the things that he wants, it's really the things that he does in the world, right? It's his jobs in the world, she's going to take part of, right? So you can understand that the queen or a woman who's married to somebody who's very powerful, she's much more involved. Let's lahavdil. We don't have a big musig of malchus, but we can understand, right, that Melania Trump has a lot more to do with the initiatives that Donald Trump wants to put into the world than some other woman in the world who is just, she also is a law-abiding citizen, and she may have a very important job, if she may be sitting in Congress, but the personal things that have to do with Donald Trump's entire plan in the world, she's not going to be involved in, right? So when Hashem revealed himself to Am Yisrael, and he said, come back to my house, come back to my Aretz, we're gonna make the Am again into one, which means now I can have a relationship with you. Now there is a woman to be intimate with, because beforehand it was just broken pieces, right? What he's doing is he's saying, I want you to participate in my plan, which is Tikkun Olam, right? And I want you to take a very involved role in it. And it's not going to be that people will see, they're going to see you active. You're going to be going out into the world, right? They're not going to necessarily, the Melech is not showing up in all of with his armor, or his army and his thing. You're going to go out into the world by yourself. You're going to do things. He pulled himself away. He woke us up and pulled himself away. But the things that you're going to be dealing with are going to be relevant to the whole plan of the world. It's going to be obvious, more obvious than ever before, that the topics you're talking about have clearly to do with the plan of the entire world, the Malchus Shamayim in the world. Okay?
So this relationship, like say when Hasidus started with the Baal Shem Tov, that didn't change the Golos equation at all, as far as what our role in our relationship with God and our ability to do tikkun when that enlightenment happened. That didn't move the needle.
That's a statement that's not incorrect. You can't say it didn't move anything. It changed. It changed the entire way Klal Yisrael thought and lived. Right? But in relationship to what's happening, that's what is so important to understand, that the difference between having the Shechina, having the Am, having Eretz Yisrael is much worse than the difference between a child and an adult. So whatever incredible accomplishments all of the different tzaddikim of whatever they gave to the Am, which is everyone on its own right huge, right? And you mentioned Hasidus, I can mention the Noda B'Yehuda also. It's not, everybody brought in something else, and they're all very, very important, but you can't compare. That's like Havla Dagarmi of the energy which was keeping the bones alive enough they can get back to Tchiyah. It was like doing the mitzvahs and Chutz La'aretz as a practice for Eretz Yisrael. It was a way of keeping people in contact with the Emunah, even though the world looked very, very dark to them. That has nothing to do with the level of revelation that's going on, that we represent midos for the entire universe right now, that we're on the daily front page of every newspaper all the time about what we did, and is it right and is it wrong, and how we treat our enemies, and we're the most, either they think we're the most evil part of the world, but really we are actually the most moral people in the world, and the incredible gilui of just the ability for us to function in proper ways in society, how a society that works, that's fair and caring about its poor, and making sure that everybody has health care, and many different aspects of the technological advancements, and our how we can change a desert into a startup nation. All of these things have an international effect of Tikkun Olam that has nothing to do with what we did in Gullus. Just there's no connection. We can't accomplish anything close to the sort of that, right? So that's an expression of Midas HaYesod. It's like Yosef in Mitzrayim. he did things that there's nothing that the other brothers could have ever touched, because what he was doing was he was an expression of the Shekhinah expressed in Hashem. He became a kli for Hashem. And so when Hashem does things in the world, begilui, right, to some degree of revelation, it's going to be impacting everything tikkun olam. It's going to shape shift everywhere. It's not like just individual mitzvahs, which the kiyum of that part of the bones of that part of nation of Europe, and this is in Taiman, and this is in that, and it's keeping those people alive. Very important, right? Not at all the same thing. So Midas HaYesod is Hashem connecting himself to the Am, that now the Am is no longer just people doing Ratzon Hashem in a vacuum. We are actually moving the world towards Tikkun Olam, not in a way that is no question that Hashem is running the universe, because you could actually question it. You can say, wow, they're just technologically advanced, they're just smart, they just, happen to win every single war, and all this stuff could be teva. You still have to have emunah. You still have to have the midah of a tzaddik, which is to connect it, to see the gilui of Hashem in the world. But it's there. You just have to not be blind, right? That's the midah of Yesod that is revealed. We're living in it all day long. It's even when there's a tremendous amount of kfira, and even when there's a tremendous lack of Torah, right? That isn't the point of Midas HaYesod. The point of Midas HaYesod is the development of the guf in a way that is, when the guf develops, it represents all of the changes that Hashem wants to bring in the world through those actions of the guf. Okay, so that's what we're doing in this country since we started. And there's no question whether you like it or not, the fact that we became a Medina, right? The fact that we have a government, the fact that we can do things as a unit, it was instrumental, was a huge part. It's a definite definition of when the guf became one, the atzamas became one body. The fact that we function as a nation with a government is definitely a stage in that, without a question. So that's what it means as Midas HaYesod is revealed. Is that clear to you?
Yeah. And where does the author say? Does the author say that?
It's from the Ramchal says in two places, one in Maimar Gula and one in Kinesh Hashem Tzvakos. The Ramchal says that Pekida, the idea of Pekida is revealed, is the revelation of Midas HaYesod, which is Mashiach ben Yosef, which is the representation of one aspect of Shechina, which is represented in Rachel Imenu, right? Which has to do with, and therefore that if when we look at the Torah and we look at Midas Yosef, it gives us an understanding of what he's saying, and the midah of Rachel is clear in a lot of places. It's the revelation of Hashem, Klilas Yofi, of the physical representation of the Shechina. It has a lot to do with Maisim, has to do with, are we doing well or not doing well? And that is the Ramchal says is what's going to happen in the Shlav of Pekida. Okay?
I'm saying the author of Sasod is basically saying this based on the Maral.
The Ramchal.
Just exactly what you said.
Mm-hmm. It is a quote. That's a quote from the Ramchal.
I'm saying the whole thing about that we are, that with the Hakamat Medina and everything we just heard is exactly what Rav Sasson is saying, or
maybe
I
may have brought it down to earth a little bit more, right? He could be talking more in code, and there's, but it's in order to feel it, it's pretty clear. It's very.
If Rav Sasson was sitting here, he wouldn't say, "I didn't say that. What are you talking about?"
No, he wouldn't say that.
Okay.
He wouldn't say that.
Put words in my mouth.
But I'm not reading every word in the Sefer on purpose, because everything needs to be brought down more and more and more and more. And he did an incredible job of putting it all together. And then there's always the job of every person making it relevant to their life. And that's a personal job. So I'm explaining it the way I understand it, and you're going to go away and figure and understand the way you understand it, and that's your Chidushei Torah. And every person who ever gave a piece of Torah over is meant to have their experience, and the other person is meant to take their experience from it. Okay, so it's never going to be, I didn't say that, I did say that. That's what you understood, and that's what you're holding, and that's what's beneficial to you. Okay, so now there's a very deep idea hidden in all of this, which maybe I explained a little bit before, which is that the Rav Kook speaks about this in a few places. There's a huge shift this happened because of this. Whether we have the ability to deal with things that we never dealt with before, like the Rambam writes in Moreh Nevuchim that the Avos were shepherds because in order to really be masig ruchnius, you have to separate yourself olam hazeh. And you can see things in the Piskei Rambam clearly like that, and his son went even further. And Rav Kook writes that we are like, compared to the Rambam, we're like a donkey. We're not. He's like an aryeh, like a donkey. But he explains that the difference is never judged in the individual. The difference between the two individuals is not as important as the generation that these individuals are expressed in. Right? It's like Chazal say many places that the ability for a tzaddik to be himself in a full-fledged version depends completely on the dar. Simple expression of that: Lech reid, Moshe Rabbeinu is getting the Torah. Ki shiches amcha, your am went down. Lech reid, you don't belong here anymore because your whole ability to be here is dependent on the madrega of the am. Ezra HaSofer, the Gemara says, what's supposed to be Roy L'Kabel Torah, Ki Moshe Rabbeinu, but the Torah wasn't Roy L'Kach. Hil Hazaken, it says that there was a baskol, and it revealed itself and said there's Roy, one of the people over here to get Ruach HaKodesh, I forgot the Lashon exactly, here. Yesh kan echad sheroy tishul hashchina ki Moshe Rabbeinu el she'ein doro zakai lakach nasu chachamim es einayhem behil hazokein. So the godless of a certain person's neshama is impacted hugely by the dar. The dar that is revealing the midah of Yisod, the Shechina, expressed in a connective space where the body is doing the job of the Melech, has the ability to understand how Gashmias is a Merkava, is part of the Gilui of Hashem in the world, better than any door before it, because we live it. It's not something. One of the Talmidim of Kook said, people in his generation sort of understood what he was saying, right? But the younger kids of our generation understand it completely because we're living it, right? It's never going to be just about being your madrega of your neshama.
Regardless, the best you could do was business, Hashem can be expressed in your business dealings.
You can do halacha, you can do the right thing, you can keep mitzvos. Right, you can be yashar and halacha like Yaakov Avinu, and you can keep choshen mishpat, right? But every single young person in this generation is looking that when they are dealing in olam hazeh, it has spiritual meaning to it. It has ramifications on the whole world. I want that my marriage should be something more than just two people trying to make a house and bring children into the world. I want a very deep relationship which represents the relationship between Am Yisrael and Hashem. That's a component that young people relate to in 1 second when you tell it to them, like they wake up, right? I want that my business should be not just about making money. It should be about changing the world, right? People, all the younger people of the generation are looking for that. You know,
It's true, even in the secular entrepreneurial world, there's like a lot of
right, the idea
shifted focus.
the idea of having meaning, which is basically spiritual, which is basically expression of something beyond myself, which has to do with the advancement of the world to Tikkun Olam, right? And ultimate Tikkun Olam means that Hashem is shorish, exists in the world in a relationship of dveikus. These are concepts that everybody has, and it's funny where you can have a generation who feels, and correctly so, could look at themselves and say, you know, I feel so low. I don't know, you know, I barely keep halacha, and I, you know, maybe daven and all these things, but I want Ruach HaKodesh. I want Nevuah, right? Both of those experiences exist equally, right? And that's not an accident. It's because the neshama, the shechina, is much more expressed in all of us individuals. We know where we're supposed to be going now. We can feel the end direction. So we're driven towards it. And even though our personal madrega, because of Yeridas Hadoros, right, this is the dichotomy that you always have to keep in mind, which is there Yeridas Hadoros or is there Aliyas Hadoros? So in one sense, since the world left Maimon Har Sinai, and we got farther and farther away from it, there is Yeridas Hadoros, right? And the world is literally falling apart, right? And it's not an accident. It's supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be the Ra is supposed to be given a opportunity to express itself in the utmost until it's revealed that it was never ever in charge, and that's not an accident. On the other hand, Hashem is the Melech always. Every second. And every second the world is getting closer and closer and closer to Tikkun. While the Ra is mishtolel and doing its worst and most destructive things, like Haman was doing his most destructive things, he's just creating the Geula. So in the outer trappings of the world, the way people look, the way people are actually behaving sometimes, and even their meisim, you see real zevel, you see real garbage. But if you listen to people on the inside and where their desires are, and where they're what's alive inside of them, you're going to be in touch with the inner workings of the world, and there the world is actually getting better and better and better, and people are developing morals of how the world should be and how it's not right. You know, slavery was like a thing 100 years ago. It was okay. And nowadays, it's only okay if you hide it. That's already like super advancement in society, right? So these are things that freedom is an idealism which is talked about throughout the entire world. The value of a human being talked about the entire world. That wasn't true not so long ago, right? The whole world is advancing in Pneumius. But it's also true that the Chitzonius looks bad. So you have to, that's why it's so important to learn about Pneumius, because you don't take so seriously, you don't take with such negativity the expressions that you see in the world, because you can listen to the person inside of them and say, okay, yeah, there's a reason why he's holding there. The world has been very, very cruel to very difficult to live in, and there's a lot of negativity going on, and the Stat Hara has incredible shlita, but it's just a klipa. It's going to be so fast flipped off when the time is right, because the people are built inside to be driven towards Geula consciousness and towards Shechina. It's just a question of when.
So are Muslims also feeling the same thing, and their Pneumius is, driving them to kill and to do all kinds of things for what they feel is very religious. They're religiously motivated, spiritually motivated.
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
Look, there's no question that the Muslims, bebechina misuyemes, they have values. The readers they have power over the Western world is because they have a higher value system in certain things than the Western world does, and people are driven by that. and they don't like the decadence that exists in the Western world. And the Muslims have an expression that looks on the outside like they're more dedicated to spirituality. They're more dedicated to God. They don't tolerate misbehaviors like alcohol and things like that. And so that does have an impact. It's also true that Islam is extremely messed up. It's not, I don't have to be a Kiddush in the Middle East, and Israel can feel that all day long, right? But it's messed up in its ideology, at its core. And there's also a tikkun going on of Islam, where people are facing the fact that to be murderous and in the name of God, there's something wrong with your God, right? And the relationship that they have to women is something extremely messed up. The fact that they have child marriage, and Muhammad's the way he related to his wives and all of his sexual things is pretty bad. So there's a certain hisaros that Islam itself needs tikkun, right? The Rambam writes clearly in Hilchos Malachim that both Islam and Christianity are part of tikkun olam. It's that the world was not monotheistic before that, and these two powers, it's clear that the existence, whoever this person was, Jesus, he had incredible impact on the world, right? And whatever we have to say that we don't agree, and there's Chazal, Chazal have very negative things to say, but he brought a consciousness into the world, at least they say Bishmo, that was pretty powerful and changed the world to be monotheistic. And Muhammad did the same thing. Is it Shalem? No. Every single religion needs tikkun to get back to, but the truth is, so does Judaism need tikkun. We are always processing, right? So among the religions that are expressed in the world, we are closer to the actual expression of tikkun in the world. But we also need tikkun, they need tikkun. So yes, I would agree with you that there is they are participating in this tnua of tshuva that the whole world is going through, and they have an element. They are showing us the midah of hachna. They're showing us the midah of mesiras nefesh, and that's why it says in the Zohar Kodesh that their achiza in Eretz Yisrael is because Yishmael did bris milah when he was 13 years old. And that is a semel, that is a sign of the whole midah of mesiras nefesh that exists in that ummah, that exists till today, and is definitely mikatreg. It's there to, the whole idea of kitrug is to pull out the din that where's your mesiras nefesh and where's your mesiras nefesh, and it's not a wonderment when you understand the spiritual mechanics that the more we're moser nefesh for Am Yisrael, for Medinas Yisrael, for protecting the Am, but creating a place where Jews can be in their homeland, which is an extremely important part of the development of the world, the more we're in Moser Nefesh for that, the less koach they have, right?
So this idea of Moser Nefesh is also unusual. The Medrash brings examples of people who said, what was the power of the Jewish people? They said, well, he had this guy Avram, is willing to kill his son. He said, willing to kill his son? I'll kill my son. I'll do better than him, right? And that in some way was a kitrug against the Jewish people, it seems.
You're talking about the story of Moav, where where I forgot his name now, where he shechted his son, and
right.
That stopped the advancement of the Jewish army and David against him. And at the same time, the Gemara in Tainus says, in Daf Gimel, that the Lo Allah Belibi, that not what the idea that Avram sheshech the son was never in my idea, and what Moav did and Yiftach did, also different lashonos and Chazal of how that is nothing to do with what I said. So what you see in that is that things are not black and white. In other words, you can have something which has partly midah, which is very important, and partly really messed up. And so what will happen is it'll make an impact to the part that's good, because Kadosh Baruch Hu is not mekapeh, Chaya Kol Beria. Nebuchadnezzar walked Dalad Amos Lechvod Hashem, and he got to be Kovesh Dalad God Ruchos Hashemayim, right? Every action that is, every tov in the world brings tov, will bring good things with it. And because there's an element of it which is messed up, it's going to need to be refined. And so it caused impact, but it's not like that Moav became the Am, which is like Avram Avinu, which is, Yan Asher, you listen to me and now you're going to be my people. It didn't happen like that. There was something wrong with it, but it made an impact, because every time you do something which is spiritually refined, it's going to make an impact, which is why it's very hard to judge ever anything, because people, the fact that they have certain elements of what they're doing has good mitos in it, that's going to make an impact. That's going to affect things. That's going to be good in the world. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so the main point that I want to get to is that there's a shinoi. It used to be the way the Torah was set up, was that there was Chol and Kodesh were kind of like neighbors. Okay, we have the chelik of the world, which is Kodesh, and then we deal with the chelik of the world that's Chol, as much as possible not to get too caught up in it, but they're really not working together. That was how Gullus worked. And the dangers of Chol we avoided by being Kulo, Taman, and Kodesh. The revelation of Eretz Yisrael, Am Yisrael, the Shechina, Midas HaYisod, is one where it's what's the Ramchal speaks about in Maimar Vikuach, is how Yesra HaKabbalah al the Pshat of Torah, of Niglas HaTorah, is that, no, they work in tandem. Actually, the way to get to all of the madregas of Kedusha that you're talking about is to go be involved in the Chol and find the Kodesh within the Chol. Right? So as I spoke about before, let's say one example of that is the extreme explosion of sexuality in the world. Okay? So nowadays, just on a technical level, you're not going to be able, the exposure is so strong that if you don't delve into the topic of sexuality from a spiritual perspective, you'll be caught up in the worst schmutz in the world. And that's the only way to survive it, right? On a Medina level, if we don't go into how governments can function and have all kinds of arguments about what's a proper law, and the Supreme Court and Knesset, which is basically the lower version of Malchus, and we'll get into this. He explains this in depth. We'll get into this, but obviously, government represents the lowest form of the expression of the neshama in the world, which is called the nefesh. Right? It deals with all of the technical things, the functionality of the Medina. So we don't have one melech right now. We have a government, a democratic government. But what are they arguing about? They're arguing about things, concepts, morality, how properly to run a Medina with mitos that are good, right? That's constantly what the topic of conversation is. You can't have a country and not work that stuff out. So you have to figure out how Nihul HaMedina can be done as a merkava for Shechina, meaning the morals and ethics of Hashem. That you have no choice. You can't ignore that part. Some of the Haredim want Ki'ilu to we're not part of the coalition, we're not part of the government, but it's not working. They saw clearly that you have to actually be part. You have to participate. At some point, you're going to get your opinion. You're going to have to be involved, and because they're very much in a gullus mentality, they're still like, no, we're only going to get involved in the parts that have to do with the Beis Medrash. And therefore, we're going to talk about Teksivim for Lomdei Torah. But if it's a discussion about Hitnat Kut, or it's a discussion about, I don't know, whatever, how we should treat Mechablim or whatever other things in the world, we're going to abstain. We're not going to have a conversation about that. But at some point, like, guys, you're a huge majority in the country. You have to have an opinion. You have to participate in these things. It's no longer possible. And the younger generation, the Haredim, totally no. It's like, no, we can we survive? There was an idea in this country that Gedolei Olam put in, that we should spend learning Kolel. We should be separate ourselves from Olam Hazeh. But it's not. First of all, they never meant it to be a long period of time, and second of all, it's not sustainable. The fact that it's not sustainable means that we need people in the workforce in the ways that they don't lose their madregas of ruchnius, right? There's no way to avoid that, and we're going to do it in a way that maintains this change that happened in the world, which is clear that the Olam HaTorah has never been so huge. There was never such a huge system of yeshivas, everyone going to school and everyone learning, maybe time of Chizkiyo, I don't know. But in our recent memories, we never such a thing, right? So at the same time, there's this huge explosion of Olam HaTorah, but we're forced to find how those two worlds come together and how you can express all of that limud Torah in all of the different physical things. How do you have a army which is run by morals of Hashem? Because the complaint is we can't be, there were some people in the Dati Leumi world who went in there with their morals and values, and they saw that the government wasn't allowing them to do things, and they were mitkapel. Well, what happens if you have people who are not willing to mitkapel? So now there's a change happening in the army in the highest levels. There's people who are I remember in Tzuk Eitan, I think it was, where there was this one mifaked who davened in front with his people, and he got in trouble, and he got hudach from whatever it is, and like that would not happen nowadays. It's just like, guys, we're davening now. Everyone's scared. We're praying to the one who makes the decisions over here in this world, right? There's the ruach of Torah is, and the physical expression of how to run a country, of how to fight in a war, are coming together. And now we're having decisions of how to treat our enemies in a way like that. You actually, instead of this whole idea that tzava hagana Yisrael, like, that's pretty strange. Like, the American army is not called the defense, the defense army of America, right? Even though the defense secretary, he was called defense secretary, and Trump wanted to change it. He changed it to the secretary of war, right? Because it's not true that the only thing you do is defend yourself. Sometimes you actually wipe out your enemies. It's not like that's the way we live. We want to wipe out our enemies, but if there's no choice, we're gonna wipe them out. Do you know one of the erchei tzal? There's certain arachim of tzal that they use that it's called ruach tzal, right? Not one of those arachim is nitzachon. It wasn't in their lexicon, right? That's a golus mentality. Now it's like spoken out clearly from the head of the country. It's like, we're here to win. We're here to end this enemy, that they will never bother us again. These are changes. That's midas hanetzach. It's a totally different expression. Midas hahod is we hide, and we're galus. We defend ourselves, and we're still and midas hanetzachon is like, we're here. We're going to be a world power, and we're going to, anybody who's going to start up with us, we're going to destroy them, and we're going to destroy it in the name of good against evil, right? That's a tremendous change that's happening in the world, which is an expression of the necessity for midas of elokus to be mislabesh, to be represented in physical things like army, right? So we are in this generation, we have the opportunity, we have the responsibility, because we have no choice, and the opportunity to reveal the connection between neshama and guf like never before, Maybe when Beis Hamikdash existed, I don't know, but in Gullus, the time I can conceptualize it. There's never been such an opportunity, and that is all part of Pekida. That is the stage that we're in right now.
It's really chazak, because it allows you to fully live whichever inner calling or path is inviting you, whatever. In other words, whether you're meant to do something really physically meaningless or whatever it is, and then once you're doing that thing, to to meaningfully introduce the Torah and Kodesh elements as well in that space. And but you're saying not from the sense that it's only the Kodesh thing that has value, but it's to find the ways that being deeper in the Chol allows for new elements or more elements of Kodesh, because that's where the generation is at in terms of our need to integrate this.
Right. The only way to reveal the real Kodesh is through deeply being involved in the Chol. And that was never the case. It was always the case that to avoid to being Kodesh, you avoided Chol. And now it's through Chol, we get to Kodesh. And that's a huge change. So
I
that's
need to internalize that, because I'm very much still in the space of rejecting Chol.
right. A lot of it's that. So when one of the shifts that has to happen from the Golus mentality to the Geula mentality, and it is this shift of how we relate to the body, and the place that the shift happens the fastest, the most, is on an Am level, and then we can take it from. It's very easy for us to realize the kedusha of anything that has to do with Am Yisrael Chai, right, and the protection of our nation and building of our nation. It's really easy to get in contact with that and saying, oh, that's a very spiritual endeavor. Then you can take that expression of those ideas and relate them to your day-to-day life, and then you can understand how every single part of your life in all of the details are just like that. There's nothing that we do in Eretz Yisrael, but in really as Jews, that doesn't reveal every part of our life is a way of relating to Hashem. Everything. And the key, if I would say, the key shift that makes it possible is that there's a shift between just maisim, which was halacha, which is like, we eat matzah like this, we like this, there's a certain amount of time, and you shake a lulav like this, and Shabbos this is the halacha, and this is wrong, and this is mutter, and this is asur, to a place of where I'm trying to understand what's going on inside of me around all of these mitzvahs. What midah is pushing me to do this? So when my whole relationship with food is the whole topic of relationship with food on Pesach is a big thing, right? Some people really hate Pesach because it's like, wow, I can't eat what I want. And then other people are able to step into a space of like, I can actually mitahir my body and put myself in a different space because I want to be my body to be more elevated and able to process reality in a different way. How science is already discovering how much the gut influences all of our emotional health, right? So what you are what you eat. So this is an opportunity to change how you relate to food through Pesach, right? Who's in charge, you or the food, right? And then what do you want to do with the food? Do you want to create yourself a situation of being free, of being safe, of being connected to the one who's taking care of you, or you're not? You don't care about that right now. All you care about is the fact that your taivas are wanting you to stuff things in your mouth so you can move on, right? Is there actually something elevated happening every single time you eat, right? So the midos to understand what's going on inside of me while I do my actions. That's the shift. So like when a person goes to war, you can't go to war unless you have a ruach inside of you, unless you're driven by something, or else you just can't go. Okay, you shoot a gun like this and you do like this. It won't work. You can't fight a war like that. And any war, someone told me there's a book that describes all of the wars of history and showing how the morale behind the war was the fundamental facts, the decision of whether or not that side won, right? The ruach of any group of people is much more important than anything else. When a person's in politics, right? Clearly, if you're motivated to make money and to have power, then we see all kinds of fraud going on in all kinds of places in the U.S. and I know what's going on in Israel too, right? Yeah, you can do that. Or if you actually really care about people and you want to function in government, then you can do that too. Everything is up, but it has everything to do with what's going on inside of your mitos, what's going on inside of your morals and values. When I was younger in yeshivas, there was almost no discussion of right and wrong. It was ma katuv, ma lo katuv. If it says in halacha, then it's that. But what's actually the right way to live? What's good? What's a good way to treat people? What's the best way to say it is morals. How does a person what's the right ideology? That wasn't the topic, right? And nowadays it's almost like shagor b'pi nefesh. That's not the right way to act. That's not the wrong way to act. And people question halacha and they tear it apart. And it's like, how could halacha say this if it doesn't feel right? And that's a good thing to do. You know, you can push the Torah to a question, and your Torah will always come out if it's Dvar Hashem. Then it'll end up to the answer of how it's not messed up, right? And it's also possible that Meshech HaDoros, there are certain Talmidei Chachamim who weren't mushlam, and they had certain psukim that were okay. We see that they're not exactly. Once we're trying to get the panemius of things, they don't line up, but they're not perfect, and they should be. We should change halacha based on the panemius.
So
That's.
I'm curious about something else. Since the Jewish people is still one body, does Rav Sasson discuss, the shift that needs to happen for the Jews that are in Golos? There's a considerable period of time when they're sort of noticing that something is changing here, and what happens to them? Are they supposed to change? Are they supposed to separate? How does that flow? If it's one body, how does the action reaction happen between?
Okay, he doesn't speak about this part, but there's clearly in the Gemara and Erchin that there's a spiritual value of having Rov Am Yisrael Bad Maseinu. The halacha of Yovel cannot happen, which is a spiritual revelation of a certain madrega of godliness in the world, cannot happen until Rov Am Yisrael is in Eretz Yisrael. So,
which basically is the case today, right?
I don't know exactly how the numbers go, but it's getting very close, right? So
it depends if you count halachic Jews or not. Because people pretend like America has whatever 5 million.
Yeah, apparently if you discount those people, then
I see.
Rav Jews.
Interesting. So what does that teach you? That teaches you that the rove is always how to look at things, and this is what's really going on. Everything else, what's the main thing and what's the side thing, right? So if the main presence of Am Yisrael is in Eretz Yisrael, that means the Shechina is the main thing, and the diaspora, the expression of lack of Shechina in the world can be a outer representation of that. Jews in diaspora can be still connected to Shu the Shechina, Shu their relationship with Eretz Yisrael. But it's also clearly obvious from the Hashgacha, clearly, that we have a mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael. Every single Jew you're supposed to live in Eretz Yisrael. You're supposed to be do Shivas Tzion. That is, and people used to complain about the abilities to do Parnasa. That's clearly shifting, right? Clearly, there's opportunities in this country that don't have in other countries, and it's only going to get more and more. The sina of the goyim is getting bigger and bigger, and people can try all they want to educate on that. It's not going to work. They're going to clearly force us out of Golos because that's not where we belong. So to me, it's clearly obvious that it's just a push, just like in the time of Ezra, there were people who weren't Oile, right? And it's clearly a push for everyone to come back home.
So that's an interesting paradigm. So in the time of Ezra, the majority of the Jews stayed away, right?
Okay.
And so how did they look upon? So this whole Pekida, the way we're describing the new role of Jewish people in Israel did that happen, or I guess you say maybe it didn't happen because they didn't get the majority, so it doesn't align with the dry bone scenario because they never got the.
Okay.
Did they become that place where they are influencing the world and everyone's looking? Did they make the
If you
the
notice,
Times of Cairo? Were they front page news there?
if you notice, since we got back to Eretz Yisrael in Bayesheni, there was almost never a period of Malchus Yisrael except for a brief period called Hashmonaim, which ended, I don't remember the numbers, it was a short amount of time when Herod killed them all off. Okay, and he was already a Roman general. Until then, we were extremely dominated by one of the Arba Malchus, whether it's Persia or whether it's Yavan, and we didn't have autonomy. Okay, the level of Shechina that was in Bayis Sheni was not what was in Bayis Rishon, right? So it was a very important ma'avar for Am Yisrael to go through that. Yes, have a Beis Hamikdash. We had the Gilui of Torah Shebal Peh happened as a result of Bayis Sheni, as a result of coming back to Eretz Yisrael, and I don't mean to say we didn't have Torah Shebal Peh beforehand, but it was Anshe Knesset Gadol, all Takanas of Anshe Knesset Gadol, at least a chelik of them clearly, Ezra and Nehemiah made Hilchos Muksa. Many the tefillas that we have, the Darabarans that we have, many of them were made by Anshe Knesset Gadol at that time. So the revelation of Am Yisrael participating in the revelation of Hashem in the world through our own work, through our own seichel, through our own masa matan. There was a very important stage in the development of humankind in its ability to be connected to Hashem. But it was not at all what it was like when there was a Navi. It was not at all what it was like when there was a Melech, right? It was, even the Kohanim Gedolim there was, issues with them. Some of them were not so good. So we're talking about a very dwarfed representation of what's possible. The Geula Asida, which we're in the middle of, is going to dwarf that completely. The Bayis Sheni, there's a famous question about how come I have to remember, the Ramchal explains this beautifully. How come the Bayis Yechezkel saw in Bayis Shlishi, it doesn't have anything to do with Bayis Rishon, and doesn't have anything to do with Bayis Sheni. And I have to look at exactly how he explains it. But he explains that Bayis Sheni wasn't the ultimate goal.
Again, that one of Bayis Shlishi was not like
the
Rishon?
Nevuah of Yechezkel of Bayis Shlishi, it wasn't what they built in Bayis Sheni, right? In other words, it was clear that what they were going to accomplish in Bayis Sheni wasn't the ultimate goal. It was a process. It was a mavar. I have to look again in the Ramchal. He explains this really. I don't want to say it over without getting exact, but it's that was the point. It was when the Heichal was destroyed. I think he says like this, if I'm not mistaken. I think he says that the Beis Hamikdash Shalamala that was lost. That was the Beis Hamikdash when the Beis Hamikdash Shalamala, when the Beis Hamikdash Shalamala was destroyed in Bayis Rishon. The Beis Hamikdash Shalamala was nistalik, and what was the Beis Hamikdash of Bayis Shlishi. So the reason there wasn't Hashras Hashchina in Bayis Sheni is because it wasn't actually a reflection of the Shechina Lamala, Lamata Lamala, where did not stim, they didn't go together. Because the reason why Yechezkel was seeing that is because the revelation of Shechina that needed to come into the world is one that will come, but Bayis Sheni did not get there yet, and so they built something which is an intermediary. I'm pretty sure he says something along those lines. I have to refine it, but you hear the idea, right? That's why when we lost, there was an opportunity of David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech to do things, and probably because of Chet HaMeraglim more than anything, that we weren't able to do it as an Am. So the final tikkun is what we're going through now, which is a totally different version of Shechina, which like we're saying is a revelation of Tikkun Olam that was probably never ever happened. You know, it's hard to understand exactly how Shlomo HaMelech impacted the entire world, but whatever it was pretty small-lived, right? Short-lived. It doesn't look like that's the direction we're going now. It looks like the direction we're going now is very solid, as to being a world power, based on geopolitics, not just a huge figure of Am Yisrael who is amazing, and as soon as he dies, it's all over.
Do we have any writings anywhere that reflect the Torah community outside of Israel at Bayit Sheni? Did they have an awareness that they kind of neutered the potential of Bayit Sheni? Or in other words, they obviously justified because Torah was stronger and it was too dangerous and whatever.
The same way they justify nowadays.
Right, but did they have any awareness of that they actually changed the course of Jewish destiny? That it could have been something greater, and it never was. And they are. I mean,
I don't know. I
Anybody-
can't. I don't have.
anybody-
I can't answer that question because I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing that it says in the Sefer Meleches Shlomo that Ezra HaSofer was Mekalel Teiman,
right.
and that's why they're aniyim both in money and in Torah. So they probably, had some cognizance of the impact of what they did from that, but I don't know.
Why Taiman and not Persia?
I don't know. I don't know.
Most of the Jews in Persia.
I don't know. Maybe there was more of an aliyah in from Bavel that I don't know. Not sure. Okay, so that's clear, right? That's what it means. Midas Hayesod. That was.
I think it's pretty clear. It's also pretty clear in the intimate process, because if you just looked at the woman, you wouldn't know that there was any intimacy until there's some kind of fruit that is had. Just the seed itself is hidden.
Okay. Okay, so we ready to go on? We got that clear?
I'm tired. I'm gonna take in what I take in.
We can stop now and we can continue tomorrow on the topic that we're going to do is just more of a pirut in understanding of how this works based on Naran Chai, which is the description of a human being is split up into nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. And first to understand that on a human level of each individual person, and then we can understand it on an am level, and that will give us more of an understanding of the progression of what we've been talking about in more grave detail, of understanding the different parts of.
That actually sounds epic.
Yeah, no, it's definitely epic, but we can wait till do it tomorrow. We can have epic theory tomorrow.
Thank you.